The Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, NSIA, has sealed a $1.4 billion deal with OCP of Morocco, as well as the Akwa Ibom State government to develop a plant where ammonia and diammonium phosphate will be produced. There are other partners involved in the project, and to have a greater understanding of what this project is all about, we are now being joined from our Rise Abuja studio by Uche Orji, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority. Good morning, Uche Orji, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yes, good morning. Well, very quickly, we have seen several agreements signed in Morocco last week. What is the multipurpose industrial platform project? What is it about? And what are the benefits of these partnerships that Nigeria should look forward to?
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, this agreement that was signed is a milestone accomplishment from an earlier one signed in 2018, which at the time was exploratory. Can we do this? And then what we signed in Morocco with OCP was a definitive agreement to proceed, shareholder agreement, and a joint venture agreement. So let me explain the background to all of this, and then perhaps explain what the significance of what's happened last week really is. If you recall, back in 2017, the NSIA was tasked with managing the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative, which had its own accomplishments in its own right, but the major partner in that program was OCP. At the time, the government wanted to domesticate the production of fertilizer blends in Nigeria. And for that to happen, we needed to buy a few raw materials, ammonium phosphate from Morocco, and potash, which we now buy from Russia, and then urea from Indorama. So these are blended to produce the fertilizer needed in Nigeria. At the time, only 4 fertilizer blending plants were working. Fertilizer was 13,000 naira a bag, up to 13,000 naira a bag, and there was no evidence farmers were getting them, and there were subsidies that were paid that no one had any inkling as to whether it really got to the farmers. Fast forward from that time to 12 months later and up until last year, we now have over 42 domestic blending plants in operation. Fertilizer prices came down from that 13,000 naira a bag before the PFI program to initially 5,000 naira, and then now to 5,500 naira, then down to 4,005, and then back now of course to something roughly above 5,000 naira ex-factory price. Of course, the price keeps going up because of rising cost of raw materials. But if you look at it, cost between 2017 and today, this has done had a tremendous impact in Nigeria because price of fertilizer came down. You can trace every bag sold, and you don't have subsidy being wasted. And then there was a hell of a lot more fertilizer being now delivered in the market than there had been previously. I still remember the first year of implementation, we had 7 million bags of excess fertilizer in the warehouses, and that just spoke to the success of this program. Along the line, we spoke to Morocco and said, what you sell to us is actually something called ammonium phosphate, which means you use ammonia. Where do you buy it from? They said, well, we'll buy it from Canada, we'll buy it from Saudi. We're like, well, how about we produce ammonia for you here in Nigeria, because the feedstock for ammonia is natural gas. And that conversation started. And in 2018, we agreed to explore it. And in 2021, we reached a final agreement to proceed. And a site was approved in Akwa Ibom State, because we had gone round, we had looked at River State, we had looked at Delta State, we had looked at various other places to finally decide to site it in Akwa Ibom State. So the agreement then was joint venture agreement, shareholder agreement, and then to proceed to build this plant. So OCP will offtake all the products. I will retain a little bit for domestic production of diammonium phosphate. Then we'll buy the phosphate rock from Morocco, blend it here in Nigeria, and that will supply the needs of both countries. I think this is really a truly remarkable deal. And we've had so much interest now. I mean, at the moment, if I tally all the interest I have to invest in this project, we are way oversubscribed for the amount of money we need. So we're hoping to start construction, break ground this year, and it will take about 2-3 years to conclude the construction of that plant, and then we'll start selling products.
And you mentioned you considered other states. Can you tell us the factors that led you to actually select Akwa Ibom? And also, can you shed more light? There was an MOU that the NSIA and OCP also signed with the Akwa Ibom state government for agricultural development. What does that entail?
Sure. So we looked at many states. I mean, I think in Nigeria, there are many states that produce gas. One is the availability and supply of gas. The second was availability of the right draft, the right location where you have enough draft for big vessels to come and pick up the products and then export them. The other were environmental factors, because you also don't want to build them in places where ammonia is a very strange product. I'm a chemical engineer by training originally, so I really like this part of work. Ammonia is one of those things you actually have to be very careful where you produce it, because crude oil spill does damage. Ammonia spill does really devastating damage, so you need to be very careful about that. So these are all factors that came into the decision as to where to site it. And so, look, many other states have phenomenal opportunity, and many of them already have existing plans there. But I think on the balance between ourselves and our partners and our engineering consultants, Jacobs Engineering, I think we came to the conclusion that this is a best place, and also be able to expand, because I see many more things that can be built around there. Now, why is it called a multi-purpose industrial platform? And that's just because ammonia and diammonium phosphate are the first two products we made. There are many other things that can be made that are byproducts of gas, and we expect to expand substantially around the site that we've selected for these products. The agreement now with...
May I interject here? I do beg your pardon. Please hold your thoughts. We've got to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're still with Mr. Uche Orji, Managing Director and Chief Executive, Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority. As you were saying before we went on the break, Mr. Orji.
Yes, I was explaining the idea of the collaboration between Akwa Ibom State and OCP, and of course NSIA, beyond just the ammonia and the diammonium phosphate on agriculture. The truth about it is, around this sort of big investments on fertilizer production, you have other sorts of research and producing specific blends of fertilizers needed for various soil types and things like that. And usually the host community will benefit from that. So a lot of the work that's been done between OCP, subsequent to the work we are investing in, is actually seeking other areas of expanding the footprint and of the collaboration. Now, obviously, MOUs in themselves just basically mean an understanding to work together. And we'll see what comes out of it at the end of the exploratory phase. We started the same way with OCP, signed an MOU whether we should go ahead or not, and now we're in a definitive joint venture agreement and a shareholder agreement. So I think we'll just wait and see what comes out of these exploratory talks between Akwa Ibom State and OCP. But in our case, this is now real. We are going to invest. We're going to produce ammonium phosphate. We're going to produce ammonia products in the first phase, and then we'll go on to other phases depending on the needs and the demand. And from what I have seen, like I said earlier, I'm very, very excited about the possibilities of what we can accomplish here.
Just hearing this, that Nigeria is finally having an emerging chemical sector. Maybe, hopefully, someday we'll be able to have like sort of like a stock market for our chemical industry, sort of like a Dow Jones, because it came out of the the chemical industrials. So kudos to you. But I want to know the particular blend, because a lot of the farmers here use NPK 14-14-14, that blend. Are you going to be able to do that blend, for them? And also the fact that you have a lot of players coming into the market. I think the Dangote refinery too will be churning out some ammonia, fertilizer, using that option. I think you've got Indorama too, you've got Notori too. These guys too play in the chemical sector. So is this good news for the farmers because the price will further crash?
I think, yes, it will be good news for the farmers. And I agree, and I love your analysis starting out with the emerging chemical sector. I really want to pick up on that before I speak to the competitors and the collaborators in the marketplace. We believe at the NSIA that the measure of a country's industrialization is a function of the development of its basic chemical sector. period, and that is at the heart of our industrialization fund of the NSIA. I'm happy that this is the first project, but there are many more projects in the pipeline. And you're right, it was Dow, it was DuPont in the US, it was BP, and a few of these other companies. So we believe that this is something that is serious. Indorama, Dangote, these are all big players. Nigeria has the capacity to produce, to build 10 Indoramas. And you know, turning your waste gas into productive products that can be sold in international markets in itself should be a core strategy, not just of the country, but certainly it is already for the NSIA. So I'm looking forward to many more of this being built. There's nothing that stops us from being the country that produces more urea than anybody else, because quite frankly, we have a lot of gas. So as I look at what Dangote is doing, which I'm really, really excited about, and where, you know, he starts producing very soon, we'll be buying from Dangote. We're looking at Indorama, who at the moment is our #1 supplier, our only supplier of urea. Many more of this type of institutions are needed because it has the potential to turn a hydrocarbon into something that will be useful for the very long run. Now, in terms of the 14-14-14 blend and the type of other blends of fertilizer used in the country, yeah, there are all kinds of blends. There's 12-12-17, there's 20-10-10, different types of crops. Cocoa doesn't need the same fertilizer as tomato, doesn't need the same fertilizer as rice or maize. So all of these blends need to be made. And I think with these factories now being built in the country, we can do more. At the moment also, what happens is that we tend to do a lot more dry blending of products, so different discrete components are kind of blended together. To be more effective, we need to chemically blend these products, right? So that one discrete granule of fertilizer has all the necessary ingredients. These are the areas where we're progressing towards, and Dangote is driving that, Motore, Indorama, I'm not quite sure where they are on the blending aspect of the business, and certainly the production plants we have at NSIA will also be looking at that. So that way you can have the specific blend you need for the specific products, as opposed to applying the box standard 20-10-10 or 15-15 across products, which is what we're doing right now. If you do that, production yields will go up. And I think the more of these companies we have, the cheaper it is for these products to be available to farmers, and the higher agricultural sector grows. It is 1/3 of our GDP, and what we really need to grow in this country is to grow the biggest singular sector that contributes to our GDP.
Well, you've already addressed the question about why the plant is going to Akwa Ibom State in terms of location. But when is it likely to come on stream? When is it likely to be completed? And what are the kind of challenges that you envisage? And I ask about challenges because usually there are issues about community relations, about the environment. I mean, it's not as if ammonia is something you can just produce in an environment without working out, you know, what the concerns of the community will be. Are there steps in this direction?
Correct. There are steps, and you know, anybody who's delivered projects will agree with you. There is the unknown that we're yet to encounter. So we'll see. I tend to be very careful about some of these commitments, and this is why you didn't hear us talk too much about this until we were ready to go. Yes, there will be community issues still to be agreed, but I think this is why the state government was part of the agreement, and that will mean that they have to play a role in making sure we clear some of those issues. The ESIA was part of the reason why we cited it there. Many other places we looked at already had crowded facilities in the area, and so making sure you produce in a place where you have enough limits on the battery, the production, to avoid any challenges for the environment was very important to us. There will be real construction problems. These things overrun. There's no point even trying to sugarcoat it. There will be things that will come up along the way that we're hoping that we can solve. But at the moment, the plan we have on paper, based on the designs, work that has been done so far, is for 2024, this is production, in full production. So phase 1 is completed. But, you know, again, I think I've seen enough of these things to realize that if we can achieve that, that'll be great. And we are working hard enough to make sure that we come close to that. You know, it's easily possible that if we clear some of the hurdles that we expect to still see along the way, we could actually be in production before then. We'll see how it goes. But at the moment, we've had had maximum cooperation from Akwa Ibom State and all the parties involved. But don't forget, the key parties here, of course, are NNPC, Grass Aggregation Company of Nigeria, Nigeria Content Board. All of these partners were there. We have the Minister of Petroleum Resources, Minister of State Petroleum Resources, in the authority of the President as the chairman of the steering committee to ensure that we can clear all of this. So once we have the governor of the state, working with us, the Minister of State, on the order of the President, chairing the steerco, our partners OCP, superior engineering companies like Jacobs Engineering, then I think, we've managed to, and then, like I said, funding is now, as we stand here, I can speak confidently that funding is the least of the problems for this project. It is now the actual day-to-day tackling of the execution that I think will be the unknown unknowns. But at the moment, 2024 is our date for full commencement.
Change the subject. Our revenue prospects are looking a bit brighter now that oil is at $71 per barrel, I believe. What is the NSIA doing to ensure that we save some of this windfall, which is, quite a bit higher than the rather conservative oil benchmark in our budget?
Well, the decision to save is not the NSIA's to make. Of course, the NSIA is designed to receive savings. And there's a law that actually requires the government to make those transfers. And a lot of the conversations we're having with government is about actually obeying that law and making the transfers. But obviously, we live in a political economy, and we also are very aware of the devastation done to the economy last year by COVID. So those conversations are ongoing. I mean, we missed an opportunity as a country. And every time I speak to my friends, they keep pointing out to the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, which in 2012, 2013, and 2014, when oil was extremely high, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund was saving $1 billion a week. Let's think about that, $1 billion a week. So there's no shock that they're now at over $1.2 trillion, $1.3 trillion. We need to just have the discipline to save, no matter how small. Just make sure we have the discipline to save a little bit at a time. And then 10 years down the line, we can actually look to have a sizable investment. And secondly, the NSIA needs to also prove to Nigerian government that it is a worthwhile investment manager. And I think to some extent, we are working very hard to prove that. The year that just ended was a very good year for the NSIA, and we'll be announcing our results in the next month or so. And so far, last year was a very good year in terms of the external investments that we made. Markets were very good. We took advantage of it. And so we are hoping that will encourage government in accepting and believing that the NSI is a credible investor and somebody worthy of encouragement and investing. And I'm hoping that this year, my prognosis for 2021 is that investment climate will not be as good as 2020. And I'm glad that we took advantage of a lot of it in 2020, and I'm hoping that encourages government to save more with the NSIA.
Okay, I mean, you started by saying you're talking about unknown, and as you're saying that, Donald Rumsfeld just clicked in my head. Known. So let me click on the known now real quickly. I want to talk about safety protocols. What are going to be the safety protocols for this plant? Because you talked about ammonia. Ammonia is quite very iffy. A lot of people have to be very careful about ammonia. And secondly, I want to know what the off-taker market will be like. Is it just going to be our local farmers, or you're thinking of exports already and things like that?
Excellent. It's probably my favorite phrase from Donald Rumsfeld's the unknown. But let's talk about the ones that we know, as you rightly put it, Rufai. First of all, the offtake is as follows. 70% of the ammonia will be exported to OCP on international market prices. Ammonia prices have gone up a lot. I think the last time I checked, when we started these conversations, ammonia was somewhere about $250, $300 per ton. At the moment, we're looking at something over $450 per ton. So it's actually gone up a lot in terms of the market. So we're very confident about the end market of ammonia, because the demand is not just Nigeria. Every country is investing in agriculture, from Brazil to India to China. These are big populations. People are eating more and are demanding better quality food. So there's demand for these products. So 70% goes for export to Morocco for them to now produce their main product, which is ammonium phosphate, which they now sell to the rest of the world. 30% gets retained locally for us to produce what we consume locally, which is diammonium phosphate. So that offtake is done by Fertilizer Producers Suppliers Association of Nigeria. So they will offtake all of that. At the moment, even the capacity we have designed for the diammonium phosphate for local consumption is not sufficient for what our current demand is. So we must move straight to phase 2 of expanding this. Now, one other thing we're doing is there's phosphate available in Nigeria, in Sokoto, not quite as good as the one in Morocco. So some beneficiation needs to be done. So the next phase of the work we're doing is now exploring how to improve the phosphate out of Sokoto for use in this our plant. And there's also potash from Yobe all the way through Bauchi that needs to be explored. So all of these are things that we are going to be working on. So our domestic farmers will be big beneficiaries, no question about it. But we are hoping post phase 1, execute on phase 1 first, which has 70% export, 30% local consumption. Then move on to phase 2, which then allows us to become the regional hub for expansion of these products across the rest of Sub-Saharan Africa, quite frankly. So that's the vision that we have. But one step at a time. Let's get phase 1 executed first. Here we have guaranteed revenue offtake. Here we have support for gas from NNPC, Content Board. Everybody that needs to be on board is on board. It's now about execution.
At this point, we need to take a short break. When we return, the conversation will continue. Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News Channel. Our guest is still Uche Orji, the CEO of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority. Uche Orji, thank you very much for staying with us. Before we went on break, we were talking about the structure for off-takers. But within the short time we have left, maybe you can conclude your thoughts on that. I would like to ask you about the sovereign investment funds that you have and how you did last year. And if you could also just comment briefly on Infraco, in which NSIA is also involved.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Last year, like I said, it was a decent year for us. I'd like to think so. But I'm also humbly aware of this business that you can never say something like that. Because there'll be somebody somewhere that will say, no, you didn't do as well as you should have. But I think on the headlines, our profits last year was more than double the previous year. Much more than double, actually, perhaps pushing up to almost triple the previous year. So we'll see what the auditors end up with and what gets published. And the reasons were very simple. One was the global equity markets. We were very confident that regardless of COVID, this was an investment opportunity, was a buying opportunity like none other. And I have seen a few of these in my career as a portfolio manager as far back as 2001, when there was a global collapse, and that was an opportunity to buy. 2008 was another one. 2020 with COVID was yet another one. So we were aggressive somewhat, not as much as I would have liked us to be, but we were able to push the limits of our risk management, and we're able to get invested in the market. So that did well for us. Developed market equities, emerging market equities did well. Our hedge fund investments did well. Private equity investments all did well last year. So we're very happy. I think across most of our investments, we total almost 60 different investments in international markets. Almost all of them, the majority of them, had very good returns. And so that, I think, was one good thing. But again, please, past performance is not an indicator of the future. That's what they always tell you whenever you look at an investment company. So 2021, we're hoping things will be well. We've structured ourselves such that we do not run into any of these minefields that affect people. So I'm hoping that continues through 2021. And I'm hoping that we do well, but it will be very unlikely, quite frankly, that we do as well as we've done in 2020, because the investment environment is very different. So that's all I can tell you at the moment. But like I said, the results themselves, the auditors are working very hard. We will be publishing within the next month, I believe, maximum the next 6 weeks. And then we can come back to this show and analyze it. And I'm sure there'll be many of your viewers who call in and say, no, it's not as good as we want it to be. So we will always be willing for those criticisms. But I'm very pleased personally with how the year ended in 2020, because we were aggressive in restructuring and making some investments internationally as well as domestically. Infraco. Now, Infraco is a collaboration of Central Bank, NSIA, and AFC. And there were many iterations to this. Eventually, what was then agreed was that we develop Infraco. The idea is very simple. Look, Nigeria needs many investment vehicles to tackle infrastructure. And Infraco, it will be managed by an external manager, backed by CBN, NSIA, and AFC. And they will tackle, alongside NSIA, of course, various aspects of investments. We're now at the stage where we're going through RFPs from external managers, and we're still working on other things like the governance of it and ensuring that the two entities, NSIA and Infraco, sit side by side and able to invest together. We are investors in Infraco alongside, like I said, AFC and Central Bank. But the real objective of Infraco, and this is where it starts to differ from NSIA, is that Infraco is going to open up and take on other investments, take on leverage, maybe take on leverage more than NSIA can take on, which is really necessary to drive investing in Nigeria. Don't forget that NSIA's primary goal is to provide a saving space for the future of Nigerians. It's also to enhance the development of infrastructure. So we cannot take on the level of leverage needed for a company to really drive infrastructure like Infraco will. And so the NSIA exposure to it is a limited basis to our investments in it, so that NSIA can continue also to do its work of providing a savings base for the future, as well as making investments in infrastructure. So the big difference is the level of risk the two entities will take. The NSIA will not be able to, because of its mandate, and this is why these other vehicles are necessary. And we've been working on different types of iterations of this type of vehicle since 2015. And now that we have coalesced around Infraco, let's see what comes through by way of the RFP from the managers and in terms of how we govern and operate it.
So I'm going to go back to my previous question where you answered referring to legislation. Obviously, we're aware that the Senate is, considering an amendment to the Constitution, Section 162, and also amending the revenue allocation laws of Nigeria to give the NSIA a 20% first-line charge. Where are we in that course, and what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. The legislative process is still ongoing, and first of all, I'm grateful to the Senate, particularly the Senate President, and who's been really driving this. Because one thing that was very clear is, look, we're now living in a world where countries that have done well out of becoming emerging markets have had to be countries that have built a proper savings base. You can't just keep consuming everything you produce. It doesn't make any sense, right? So the idea is to also legislate it better. Because many of you, and probably perhaps Ruben will know this, because I remember we had a conversation about this back in 2012 when I came back to Nigeria to set up the NSIA. There were all kinds of questions as to whether the legislation was even right or wrong. Should we do this? It doesn't make sense. It contradicts this section. It's supported by this section and all that. And I think what the Senate is doing now is to just put an end to all that controversy. Let's not forget that at the beginning of NSIA, some states went to court. State governors went to court. And of course, that has been settled subsequently. It makes common sense. The creation of an NSIA makes sense. Now, does the legislation need to be strengthened? Absolutely. And I think what is happening now in the Senate is a recognition of the fact that it is commonsensical to have a savings base, especially if you're a hydrocarbon-based economy. And making sure that that savings base is substantial is one of the key drivers of what the Senate is doing. And for that, we're grateful. It's going through, it's been delegated to the committee level. We've had certain interactions with them, and we're hoping that, of course, all that got disrupted by all the COVID issues last year. Hopefully this year we'll pick up momentum on that. But it will be an amazing outcome when it is now a constitutionally recognized entity without any ifs and buts around it, and therefore, and then there is also a provision to save a lot more in the NSIA. That, I think, will be something really remarkable. The other thing that we're also looking at is the management of assets. So it's not just cash transfer. If you look across Nigeria, and we spoke about this last time I was on your show, the quantum of dead assets in the country, abandoned projects or businesses that are not being optimized, investments made by the country that are not well managed, are insane. And I think transferring some of those to the NSIA to manage them better is also another objective of ours, and we're pursuing it with the government, and some of this will be strengthened by legislation.
Right. Well, I'd like to say a big thank you. I mean, time is not our friend. I'd have loved to still, harp on that safety issue. Like I said, what would be the safety standards for, the plant when it's set up because of the way and the nature ammonia takes. But maybe probably the next time we get a chance to talk, we'll talk about that. But thank you so much for your time. Yeah.